They say every war criminal gets what they deserve, but what happens when the man who declared a puppet state into existence, who stood second only to the dictator, who oversaw the construction of one of Europe's most brutal concentration camps, faces the rope? Zagreb, June 7, 1947. Slavko Kvaternik climbs 13 wooden steps. At 68 years old, the man who once commanded entire armies stands in manacles. What brought him here? What did he do that was so horrific even German officers called it unimaginable? And why did his own wife take her life just 4 months after he seized power? This was ordinary. Kvaternik attended military academy, Austro-Hungarian army, World War I, adjutant to Field Marshal Svetozar Borovic, decorated, Iron Cross. First class, 1918. The old empire rewarded loyalty. Then 1918 arrives, and Austria-Hungary collapses. New borders. New nations, chaos. Kvaternik joins the National Council of Slovenes, Croats, and Serbs, Chief of General Staff. December 1918, he commands Croatian troops into Međimurje, pushes out Hungarian forces. Success, the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes forms, later called Yugoslavia. Kvaternik transfers to the Royal Yugoslav Army, serves until 1921, then retires. 21 years of military service. What happens when a decorated general has nothing left to command? The Ustaše, Croatian revolutionary movement, founded in Italy, exile politics, Ante Pavelić leads, Kvaternik follows. Their goal? Tear Croatia from Yugoslavia. Create an independent Croatian state, by any means. The movement trains in camps, Janka Pusta in Hungary, later Italy. Mussolini backs them. Then Hitler takes power in Germany. More support, more weapons, more training. They cross borders, sabotage railroads, attack buildings, kill officials. Kvaternik waits, plans. 1933, King Alexander of Yugoslavia visits Marseille. October 9th, 1934, assassination. Ustaše gunmen, King Alexander dies. So does French Foreign Minister Louis Barthou. The conspiracy leads back to Pavelić and his inner circle. Kvaternik's name appears in investigations. Exile continues. Royal Yugoslav Army crumbles in 11 days. The kingdom shatters. Axis forces offer Croatian Peasant Party leader Vlatko Maček the chance to form a government. Maček refuses. He knows what this means. German troops enter Zagreb, April 10th, 1941. Radio Zagreb, Kvaternik's voice. He proclaims the Independent State of Croatia, the NDH, Nezavisna Država Hrvatska. Hitler and Mussolini recognize it the same day. This isn't independence, this is occupation with Croatian masks. Ante Pavelić returns from Italy, April 16th, with hundreds of Ustaše followers, declares himself Poglavnik, leader, dictator, appoints Kvaternik as his deputy, the title, Doglavnik, second leader, Vojskovođa, marshal, minister of the armed forces, commander-in-chief of the Croatian Home Guard, established April 11th. Kvaternik holds the second most powerful position in the state. At 62 years old, he finally commands again. Their son, Eugen Dido Kvaternik, also Ustaše, also ruthless. April 15th, 1941, Dido becomes head of public order and security for Zagreb. April 18th, for the entire NDH. He runs the Ustaška Nadzorna Služba, the UNS, Ustaše Supervisory Service, Special Police, Internal Security, Terror Apparatus. Father and son now control the military and the police. What could go wrong? Marriage between Jews and those of Aryan descent, prohibited. Cyrillic script, banned throughout NDH territory. Any use, forbidden. Public inscriptions removed within 3 days. This is how it starts. Laws, decrees, official paper, then comes implementation, May 1941. Glina. Ustaše round up Orthodox males over 15 from Karlovac, Sisak, Petrinja. Drive them outside town, 600 men, guns, knives, sledgehammers. Nobody survives. 60 miles south of Zagreb, bank of the Sava River, marshland, confluence with Una River, strategic location, 5 subcamps eventually, Krapje, Bročica. These two closed November 1941. Ciglana, the brickworks, Camp 3. Kozara, established February 1942. Stara Gradiška, converted to women's camp winter 1942. 22 to 26 camps total across the NDH. But Jasenovac becomes the center, the system, the machine. Department 3 of the UNS runs it. Vjekoslav Max Lubric commands, under Dido Kvaternik's authority, under Slavko Kvaternik's government. Anyone deemed an enemy. The numbers tell the story. Current scholarly estimates place Jasenovac deaths between 56,000 and 97,000. Earlier claims ranged as high as 700,000. The truth lies in documentation. Jasenovac's memorial site published its list of names in 2007. Over 83,000 documented victims. Serbs between 45,000 and 52,000. Jews between 8,000 and 25,000. Roma between 8,000 and 15,000. Croats who opposed the regime between 5,000 and 12,000. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum's Holocaust Encyclopedia published online, the Jasenovac Memorial Site's official database published 2007, Wikipedia's extensively cited articles updated September 2025, and the Jewish Virtual Library's documentation of the 1947 Collaborators Trial. These aren't generic sources. These are primary documentation centers, memorials built on survivor testimony, and academic databases that spent decades verifying names and dates. Now back to the information. Masucci reports Kvaternik claimed Croatian Jews committed 300,000 abortions, rapes, and deflorations of young girls. This is the propaganda. This is the justification. This is how genocide gets official approval. The camps fill, trains arrive, guards divide new prisoners. Blue markings for Serbs, red for communists, Jews and Roma separated. August 29th, 1942, at Ciglana, prison guards make bets. Who can slaughter the most inmates in one night? Petar Brzica, a former Franciscan monk, wins. He cuts the throats of 1,360 new arrivals. One night. 1,360 people. This is documented in survivor testimony collected by the Jasenovac Memorial Site. They wrote reports. General Edmund Glaze von Horstenau, Hitler's representative in Zagreb, writes in his personal diary for 1942 that Ustaše camps are the epitome of horror. Arthur Hefner, German transport officer, writes November 11th, 1942, about Jasenovac's multiple camps. Even SS men lost their composure seeing Ustaše methods. When Germans who ran Auschwitz and Treblinka call your camp horrific, that tells you something. Jasenovac lacks industrial killing infrastructure. No gas chambers at scale. Instead, personal violence. Guards attack barracks with weapons, throw bodies in trenches. Ciglana has 88% mortality rate, higher than Auschwitz's 84.6%. People die of starvation, of exposure, of typhus, of being beaten, of having throats cut, of being burned in the converted brick furnace. Witness testimony describes children thrown alive into furnaces. Survivor Danin Jakub testifies about Christmas Day killings. Matijevic Joso pushes prisoners toward Miloš with a bayonet, hands tied behind backs. Miloš stabs each one with a butcher knife, slits every throat. Croatian politician Vladko Maček, imprisoned at Jasenovac, later asks Miloš if he fears God's punishment. Miloš replies, "I know I will burn in hell for what I have done, but I will burn for Croatia. This is the ideology. This is the justification. Nation above humanity." Kvaternik issues orders: deportation of Serbs from 12 villages in Petrinja County, 6 villages in Glina County. Destination: Jasenovac and Stara Gradiška. From Petrinja, 1,200 to 1,250 people deported. From Glina, at least 471 die in camps. This is documented in Wikipedia's extensively cited article on Slavko Kvaternik, updated September 9th, 2025. These aren't partisan attacks. These aren't military targets. These are villages, families. People rounded up by government decree signed by the Minister of Armed Forces. May 20th through July 1942. Mass arrests of Roma across the entire NDH, transported to Jasenovac. Upon arrival, divided into 2 groups. Older men with women and children, immediate dispatch to Donja Gradina for extermination. Younger men, Camp 3C, die of hunger, thirst, exhaustion, daily executions. A gypsy camp established at Uštica village for families. No room in Ciglana due to cramped conditions, summer 1942. Transported to Donja Gradina, exterminated. 15,151 Roma names documented in Jasenovac database. Most men murdered at Jasenovac. Women sent to forced labor camps in Germany. Children murdered or dispersed to Catholic orphanages. Survivor testimony describes Catholic nuns at the children's camp swinging children by their legs. Swung so hard their heads impact walls. Fatal. These claims documented, but not independently verified by multiple sources. Probably because of her husband's role, especially because of her son Dido's role, she sees what her family has become. She sees the laws they're writing, the camps they're building, the people they're killing. Her father, Josip Frank, was Jewish before conversion. Under the racial laws her husband signed, her son enforces, her family has Jewish blood. She takes her own life. Buried at Mirogoj Cemetery, Zagreb. Dates on her gravestone, August 13th, 1871 to August 31st, 1941. Kvaternik continues. No public comment. No pause. The work continues. The Vatican's representative considers Kvaternik the worst of the Ustaše. German pressure mounts. The terror is igniting partisan resistance. October 1942. Germans pressure Pavlich, remove and exile Tito Kvaternik. January 4th, 1943. Slavko Kvaternik retires from his position as Minister of Armed Forces. Given the title Vitez, Knight, for his service to the NDH, awarded First-Class Cross of the Military Order of the Iron Trefoil. But the power is gone. Father and son go into exile together, first to Slovakia. Winter 1943 moves to Simmering, Austria. Spring 1945 moves to Bad Gastein, Austria. April 1945. Soviet and Yugoslav forces close in. The Third Reich collapses. The NDH collapses. Pavlich flees. Most Ustaše flee. Some hide, some escape to South America. Kvaternik stays in Bad Gastein. Why? Age? Exhaustion? Belief he'll escape justice? The Americans know who he is. 1946. Extradition to Yugoslavia. Communist Yugoslavia. Josip Broz, Tito's Yugoslavia. The partisans won. They're building a new state. They're settling scores. War crimes trials across Yugoslavia. Belgrade, Zagreb, Ljubljana. The 7th Yugoslav trial begins in Zagreb. May 29, 1947. Military court. 6 Croatian collaborators. 1 German. The German, Dr. Siegfried Kasha, ambassador to the NDH. The Croatians, Slavko Kvaternik, former marshal, former minister, Dr. Vladimir Košak. Miroslav Navratil, Dr. Mehmed Alajbegovic, Ivan Perčević, Dr. Osman Kulenović. All faced the same charges. War crimes, crimes against humanity, collaboration with Axis powers, mass murder. The trial runs May 29th to June 7th. 9 days, 1 day per defendant. The prosecution, Miloš Minić, high-ranking Yugoslav official. Evidence presented, witness testimony, documents, decrees signed, orders issued, camps established, bodies counted. Execution scheduled same day. Method, hanging. Location, Zagreb. The details come from the Jewish Virtual Library's documentation of the collaborators' trial, published online. 7 scaffolds constructed, 3 black-painted wooden structures, gymnasium room 33 feet wide. 80 feet long, plaster walls showing cracks. The same gymnasium American guards used for basketball 3 days earlier. 2 gallows used alternately, 3rd kept as spare. Each man hanged 1 at a time. New rope for each execution. 13 wooden steps to a platform 8 feet high. 8 feet square. When the trap springs, the condemned drops into the scaffolding interior, boarded up on 3 sides. Dark canvas curtain on the 4th. Nobody sees the death struggles. Nobody sees men dangling with broken necks. Then, leather straps replace the manacles. No final speech recorded in available documentation. No last words preserved. Unlike some Nazi executions at Nuremberg where final statements were documented, Yugoslav military trials kept less detailed records of execution procedures. The hood goes over his head. Black cloth. The rope adjusts around his neck. The executioner pulls the lever. The trap opens. Slavko Kvaternik drops. June 7th, 1947. End. Died a convicted war criminal. From military academy to the gallows. What fills those 68 years? Service, decoration, retirement, radicalization, revolution, declaration, command, genocide, exile, arrest, trial, execution. But here's what the execution doesn't answer. The numbers. Between 45,000 and 52,000 Serbs dead at Jasenovac, according to current Holocaust Encyclopedia estimates. Between 8,000 and 25,000 Jews. Between 8,000 and 15,000 Roma, thousands more at other camps. Glina massacres, 2,000 to 2,400 in May through August 1941. Drakulic, 2,315, February 1942. Kozara deportations, tens of thousands. Villages across Croatia and Bosnia. The NDH killed between 320,000 and 340,000 ethnic Serbs total during Ustaše rule, according to United States Holocaust Memorial Museum documentation. Over 30,000 Croatian Jews killed either in Croatia or at Auschwitz-Birkenau. 1 rope, 1 drop. Does that equal justice for even a fraction of those numbers? The mathematics don't work. They never do. This is why tribunals matter. This is why documentation matters. This is why we count the bodies and record the names. Because without documentation, people deny. Without trials, people forget. Without sentences carried out, people believe power protects. Kvaternik believed he would escape. He fled to Slovakia, then Austria, stayed in Bad Gastein when he could have run further. Maybe he thought his age would protect him. Maybe he thought the Americans wouldn't extradite. Maybe he thought the Yugoslavs wouldn't find him guilty. All wrong. Continued Ustaše activities. Published propaganda. Never expressed regret. Died March 10th, 1962 in a car crash at Rio Cuarto. His daughter Olga, 11 years old, died with him. His wife and 2 sons survived. One son became a political science professor in Argentina. Another became a cardiologist in Boston. The family scattered, the ideology preserved. To this day, some Croatian nationalists defend the NDH. Some deny Jasenovac numbers. Some claim it was a labor camp, not a death camp. Some argue Kvaternik wasn't guilty, just following Pavlich's orders. The documentation proves otherwise. His signature on deportation orders, his command over armed forces, his position as second in command, his presence at meetings with Hitler, his role in establishing the legal framework, his government's decrees. Nuremberg trials for top Nazis, Tokyo trials for Japanese war criminals, Yugoslav trials for Axis collaborators. Not perfect, not complete. Many escaped. Klaus Barbie fled to Bolivia. Adolf Eichmann fled to Argentina until Mossad grabbed him in 1960. Josef Mengele died free in Brazil in 1979. Ante Pavlich himself escaped. Hid in Austria, then Rome, then Argentina. Died December 28, 1959 in Madrid. Never faced trial. But some faced justice. Kvaternik faced justice. Koschak faced justice. Kasha faced justice. All hanged the same day. 7 bodies, 7 ropes. June 7th, 1947. Compared to Jasenovac, where guards cut 1,360 throats in one night, where children were swung against walls, where people were burned alive in furnaces, where women and children were separated from men and immediately executed, where whole villages were deported and exterminated, Kvaternik's execution was merciful by comparison. Quick drop, broken neck, few seconds of consciousness, then nothing. The brutality isn't in how he died. The brutality is in why he died. The brutality is in what he did. The brutality is in the systematic nature of it. Legal provisions, official decrees, government machinery, military command, police enforcement, train schedules, camp construction, daily executions, body disposal, all organized, all documented, all signed. Kvaternik wasn't a sadist like some camp guards, wasn't personally cutting throats, wasn't personally throwing children in furnaces. He was signing papers, issuing orders, attending meetings, running a government ministry, making it all possible, making it all legal, making it all official. That's the brutality, the bureaucratic murder. Hannah Arendt called it the banality of evil. Eichmann at his trial, just following orders, just organizing train schedules, just doing paperwork. Kvaternik at his trial would have said the same, just organizing armed forces, just implementing government policy, just following the Poglavnik's vision. But the orders sent 1,200 people from Petrinja to death camps. The policies created Jasenovac. The government vision killed tens of thousands. That's the detail that lands. 13 steps up to the gallows. 1 step for each year he served as marshal and minister? No. Standard gallows construction, 8 feet high. 13 steps is what it takes. But here's the symbolism the Yugoslav court would have understood. 13, unlucky number. The number of betrayal. Judas, the 13th apostle. 13 steps to judgment. Then the drop. Then silence. The bodies remained hanging until all 7 executed. Then removed. Buried in unmarked graves according to communist Yugoslav practice for war criminals. No memorials. No gravestones with dates. No flowers. No mourning. Erased. This is what Tito's Yugoslavia did to collaborators. Erased them. Made examples. Said clearly, this is what happens to those who sided with fascists. Research conducted, names collected, 83,000 individuals documented. Each name represents a person, a family, a village, a life. The Jasenovac database published 2007 stands as testament, not to Kvaternik, not to the Ustaše, to the victims, to the murdered. To those who deserved to live and didn't. That's why documentation matters. That's why trials matter. That's why executions get recorded. Not for revenge, for record, for history, for prevention. So future generations understand what happens when nationalism turns genocidal. When government becomes a murder machine, when educated military officers sign deportation orders, when ministers create camps, when second in command means second responsibility. Ground-penetrating radar studies at Jasenovac and Donja Gradina continue finding mass graves. 2003 survey identified several undocumented burial sites. 2019 excavations uncovered remains at execution sites not previously mapped. The death toll remains uncertain. Not because of lack of evidence, because of too much evidence still buried, because forests near the Sava River still hold bodies, because the Una River carried thousands downstream, because the Ustaše had 4 years to kill and 4 years to hide evidence. Because April 1945, as Yugoslav partisans approached, Jasenovac guards murdered remaining prisoners, set camps on fire, destroyed records, fled. Some prisoners rose up April 22nd. Several hundred fought back, most killed, some escaped. Guards murdered most survivors before dismantling camps, late April. Partisans overran the site early May 1945, found ruins, found bodies, found evidence, but not all evidence, never all evidence. Died believing he was building Croatian independence, died believing history would judge him differently. History judges him exactly as he deserves. War criminal, mass murderer, architect of genocide, second in command of the Independent State of Croatia means second in command of its crimes. The proclamation he read over Radio Zagreb April 10, 1941, created the state. The state created the camps. The camps murdered tens of thousands. The chain of causation runs clear. The responsibility runs clear. The guilt runs clear. June 7, 1947. The rope breaks his neck. Justice cold and final. The snap of the neck, the silent swing beneath the black canvas curtain, the burial in an unmarked grave, all intended to excise Slavko Kvaternik and the Independent State of Croatia, NDH, from the collective memory. But history, like the marshland near the Sava River, refuses to fully relinquish its dead. The execution was the conclusion of one man's criminal life, but it was the start of a 70-year struggle over memory, truth, and the persistent toxic ideology that Kvaternik helped unleash. His death was a state act of closure for the newly formed Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, Marshal Josip Broz. Tito's government sought to build a united nation, a fraternity and unity, on the graves of the Ustaše and Chetnik extremists who had torn it apart. The public trials, the swift executions, the eradication of their burial sites, these were political and performative necessities. They sent an unambiguous message. Collaboration meant death. But the execution achieved the state's political goal, while simultaneously failing to address the deeper, more profound rupture that the Ustaše genocide had caused in Croatian and Balkan society. The brutality, as the previous script noted, was not in the execution itself, but in the monstrous scale of the crimes that led to it. The core of Kvaternik's crime, the foundation of his guilt, lay in the network of 22 to 26 concentration camps and the ensuing genocide, with Jasenovac as its epicenter. The script already provided the documented figures: between 45,000 and 52,000 Serbs, between 8,000 and 25,000 Jews, and between 8,000 and 15,000 Roma. But those were the names recorded by the Jasenovac Memorial Site database in 2007, a monumental feat of historical reckoning. However, the true terror of the NDH lies in the undocumented, the uncounted, and the undiscovered. Consider the Roma people, the victims of the Parajmos, the often overlooked genocide of the Second World War. The Ustaše rounded up entire families from across the NDH and shipped them to Jasenovac and its subcamp, Ustica. The 15,151 documented names likely represent a fraction of the total number murdered. Roma records were sparse, and the Ustaše's process was often swift and absolute extermination upon arrival at sites like Donja Gradina. The German officer reports mention the sheer, shocking brutality, the mass killings by sledgehammer and knife, which left no survivors and few paper trails. When whole families, often illiterate and nomadic, were immediately exterminated, who was left to mourn, identify, or document? The estimated overall number of Roma killed in the NDH is believed to be closer to 25,000, a devastating toll for a small, scattered population. The United States Holocaust Memorial Museum's documentation suggests that between 320,000 and 340,000 ethnic Serbs were killed in the NDH total. This colossal number encompasses not just those murdered in the camps, but also those killed in massacres like the one at Glina, where over 2,000 Orthodox men were slaughtered in 1941, and the victims of forced conversion, starvation, and punitive mass executions in villages. Kvaternik's May 1942 orders to deport Serbs from 12 villages in Petrinja County and 6 villages in Glina County sent approximately 1,700 men, women, and children directly into the Jasenovac machinery. Every signed decree by the Minister of the Armed Forces was a death warrant. The 2019 excavations that uncovered remains at previously unmapped execution sites speak to the Ustaše's successful efforts to hide their crimes in the marshy, difficult terrain. The river, the fire, the mass executions of the final prisoners in April 1945, these acts destroyed evidence and left a legacy of forensic ambiguity that the perpetrators, including Kvaternik, counted on. Kvaternik's execution was preceded by the self-inflicted execution of his wife, Olga Frank Kvaternik. Her suicide on August 31st, 1941, just 4 months after the NDH proclamation, is one of the script's most chilling and instructive details. It is a powerful, silent refutation of the regime's ideology, a scream of conscience in a world deafened by nationalist fervor. Under the new racial laws, the very laws her husband, Slavko, signed and her son Tito began ruthlessly enforcing, Olga was, by the Ustaše's own definition, tainted. Her father's blood, now deemed non-Aryan, had become a political and existential threat. For a woman of her social standing, who saw the monstrous anti-Jewish and anti-Serb decrees being enacted by her own family, the realization of their complicity in genocide, coupled with the threat to her own identity and security, must have been psychologically devastating. Her suicide was not just a personal tragedy, it was a potent internal sign that the center of the regime's power, the family of the second in command, was morally rotten and collapsing from within. Kvaternik's immediate public silence on the matter and his continued work only confirm his utter moral bankruptcy, prioritizing the Poglavnik's vision over the life of his own wife. The destiny of his son, Eugen Tito Kvaternik, the notorious head of the Ustaška Nadzorna Služba, UNS, the terror apparatus, provides the script's dark counterpoint to the father's execution. Tito, the architect of the camp system and the direct superior of monsters like Max Luberic and Lubo Miloš, was perhaps even more culpable than his father in the day-to-day horrors. Yet, unlike his father, Tito escaped justice. His flight to Argentina, facilitated by the rat lines of Catholic Church elements, highlights the frustrating incompleteness of post-war justice. While Tito's military court in Zagreb secured the lives of 7 men, Tito lived free, continuing to publish Ustaše propaganda and preserving the ideology. The Argentine government's refusal to extradite him, despite Yugoslavia's repeated requests, demonstrates how the Cold War and international political maneuvering shielded war criminals. Tito's death in a car crash in Rio Cuarto in 1962, taking his 11-year-old daughter Olga with him, was a grim, accidental end, devoid of the formal, state-sanctioned accountability his father faced. His survival, and the subsequent life of his children, one a political science professor, the other a cardiologist, shows the scattering of a family and the unaddressed trauma that persists across continents. It failed. The ideology that placed nation above humanity and justified the systematic murder of Serbs, Jews, Roma, and Croat anti-fascists survives in the rhetoric of a small but persistent element of Croatian nationalism. This is where the struggle over documentation becomes a political and historical battleground. The denial of the Jasenovac crimes takes several forms, all designed to rehabilitate the NDH, and by extension, figures like Kvaternik. Some groups reject the 83,000 documented names, and certainly the higher estimates from the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, claiming the actual toll was in the thousands, not tens of thousands. The other form is the reframing of the camp's purpose. The argument asserts that Jasenovac was not a death camp, but a labor camp or penal colony where the majority of deaths were due to disease or Allied bombing. This narrative is directly contradicted by survivor testimonies, German officer reports, who explicitly called it the epitome of horror, and the forensic evidence of mass graves and murder weapons. The documented industrial-scale use of personal, horrific violence, the 1,360 throats cut in one night, the beatings, the children killed by being swung against walls, the use of the brick furnace for incineration, all confirm its purpose as a brutal, hands-on extermination center. These laws immediately branded ethnic Serbs, Jews, and Roma as subhuman enemies of the state, thus justifying their eventual deportation and extermination. Kvaternik was not merely following orders, he was the second most powerful political and military figure in the state, making him a principal architect of the genocide. He created the legal and military environment in which Tito and his men could operate. The script notes the stark contrast between the execution of Kvaternik and the executions of the top Nazi leaders at Nuremberg. At Nuremberg, detailed records of the last words and execution procedures were meticulously kept, a reflection of the Anglo-American effort to establish a transparent, permanent legal record for posterity. In contrast, the Yugoslav military court was swift, opaque, and focused on an immediate politically resonant act of revenge and closure. Nuremberg justice focused on establishing a new international legal precedent, documenting every detail, and ensuring the trial itself was a comprehensive, televised history lesson for the world. Yugoslav justice focused on political and societal cleansing, establishing the new regime's power and settling scores with local collaborators. The swiftness, the anonymity of the burial, and the lack of preserved last words were all part of the process of erasing the memory of the perpetrators, while simultaneously creating a fearsome deterrent. Is the crucial philosophical hinge. The mathematics of justice for mass murder never work. No single execution, even one as symbolically significant as Kvaternik's, can balance the scale for the 320,000 to 340,000 Serbs, the 30,000 Croatian Jews, and the thousands of Roma and anti-fascists murdered. However, the act of the tribunal itself is the more profound answer. The trial and sentence of Slavko Kvaternik achieved several objectives that no number of executions could. The decrees, the orders, the witness testimonies, and the camp records were presented in court, officially confirming the state's role in the genocide. His signature, his position, and his authority were directly linked to the murder machine. It is a source used by historians to this day. He clearly underestimated the Allied commitment to the post-war extradition process, or perhaps overestimated the Americans' interest in protecting a former Austro-Hungarian officer. His extradition to Tito's Yugoslavia was a clear signal that the concept of universal accountability for war crimes, even for a local collaborator, was now a global priority. The detail of the 13 wooden steps leading to the gallows platform is the ultimate poetic and physical convergence of Kvaternik's story. It is the number of betrayal, the number that symbolizes the collapse of order into chaos. As the script stated, Kvaternik was the banality of evil in a marshal's uniform. He was not the throat cutter, but the paper signer. He was the military academy graduate who used his logistical training to systematize murder. April 10th, 1941. He read the proclamation of the Independent State of Croatia over the radio. This was the ideological birth certificate of the murder machine. May 1941. His son, under his command structure, began organizing the camps, Jasenovac, Jadovno, Gospic. This was the physical construction of the murder machine. Kvaternik's ultimate defense, had he offered one, would have been the classic justification of totalitarian subordinates. I was merely implementing the government's policy. His execution refuted that claim. The 13 steps up to the gallows represented the final, irrefutable argument that political and military authority is not a shield against individual responsibility for crimes against humanity. The anonymous, unmourned burial, a deliberate act of erasure by the communist state, was a harsh final chapter. It was the antithesis of the lavish, state funerals afforded to the heroes of the partisan struggle. Kvaternik's end was a deliberate anti-triumph, a cautionary tale inscribed not on a tombstone, but in the history books of a generation. It is the 83,000 documented names in the Jasenovac database, a constantly growing living testament to the victims of the state he founded and the bureaucratic murder he oversaw. That documentation is the only true justice that can ever be achieved for the victims of the Independent State of Croatia.